Hi there, welcome back to the channel, and of course welcome to my space. So, back with the Flying V. The last videos I made on the V were installing the Duesenberg and installing the Tone Pros. Now, the reason I was installing those is because I had had problems in those areas. This was my very first build, as I've said before. Never built a guitar before, never built a kit guitar before, and this is a kit guitar. And for whatever reason, these are no longer for sale over at BYOG. I'm assuming it's like a supply chain issue, you know, with COVID-19 and all that. But this was a number 13 kit. It had like 13 in the neck pocket and 13 on the neck. And I've seen 13 Flying Vs like floating around on eBay and stuff, Reverb and some of the other sellers that you find online. And so I know that there are 13 kits out there if you want one like this, because this one looks like the Gibson. It's routed like for an Epiphone, like a metric route, so you have to get the large post bridge, but you get the arrowhead stock, and the body is symmetrical like a Gibson, and it's all mahogany. Neck is mahogany, body's mahogany. It sounds amazing. So anyway, it was my very first build. I made a lot of mistakes, like a lot of mistakes. So I'm correcting them, and I'm getting more experience as I go, trying to learn as I go. Well, one of the things I bungled along the way was the nut, I'm sorry. And there's a very specific reason for it. So when I was setting up the Duesenberg, the original install, and I had the original Gato bridge, Goto, I'm not sure how you say that, but it's a Japanese word, so it might be Gato. My children were correcting me on that, so, but I'm not sure. So anyway, I was putting the bridge on, and whenever you were doing this, it's jumping out. And the low E string was jumping out. So like I would play something and, you know, something heavy on the E string, and it would just pop out. Or as I was putting the string on, you know, to do a new set of strings, it was popping off, which was highly disturbing to me. I couldn't figure out why, because once again, I have no experience building guitars. It's like a new thing for me. So my solution was to just file a deeper slot here on the neck, on the nut. And this is a really nice Tuss nut, which are fantastic. It replaced the original plastic nut that came with the guitar. I took that out and put a Tuss nut in, the TUSQ nut. And it's some kind of man-made thing, but it sounds great, a very musical thing. It's trying to be a bone nut, you know. Like I guess like an ivory tuss nut, but no one wants to use ivory because that's terrible. So it's like some kind of like corian type thing, but they work great, and I really like them. They're self-lubricated, which helps, you know, with sticking on a trim. So every other string went on just the way it was pre-slotted. Every other string went on beautifully, but this low E was jumping out of the slot. So in my lack of knowledge, instead of like working a little on this and working a little on that and trying to find out what's wrong, why it's doing that, I just started carving on the nut, you know, just sawing away until I saw the string drop down enough, and until it would hold it in place, you know, in the tuning peg, which I knew wasn't, you know, correct, but I also knew that it was the only way I could get the guitar to become playable. And that was kind of the goal, is just to get to the point where the thing would just play, you know. So now that everything else is right and everything's sounding perfect, I got rid of all the string buzz, got it to intonate perfectly. Well, not perfectly, but better than ever, you know, really darn close to being exactly what it needs to be. I got the Duesenberg back on. I got everything back to the way it was supposed to be with the new parts. But now, buzz. I was having a little buzz up here. It was only on this string. Everything else is perfect, you know. But we're having a little bit of string buzz on this E string. And like when I look at the guitar, I can tell, I won't read here, but I can tell that the E string is lower than the rest of the strings because the nut is slotted too deeply. So it's sitting way down in there and getting really close to the frets. So I ordered a new nut. They're only $11.70, I think. I found a seller who I bought another one from, and he charges like, you know, it's like $12 or something and shipped. So it's not that it's expensive, and like I said, I think these nuts are fantastic. Short of cutting your own bone nut, I think that's the best way to go. It's easy, and they sound great, and they really help with the not sticking on the trim, I think. I think they're great. So I ordered another one, but Removing a nut and installing a nut is no joke, especially on this guitar, because Gibson's, the nut kind of sits right here on the neck as opposed to being in a slot like on a Fender. And when you're removing the nut, it's pretty easy to screw up and take material off the neck, and then you're in trouble. And then sometimes you have to shape the nut based on the neck, and then you can get in even more trouble. And like when you're taking the nut off, you could potentially harm your fretboard or harm the wood around it. And then it's a real pain to put a neck back on, to put a nut on, especially with this guitar. It's a little slim up here, so lining up the strings took a bit of work. And all the while, you got to put a little dab of super glue on there and try to quickly position it and make sure it's going to work perfectly before that glue dries. So there's a lot going on with a nut install. So I was kind of dreading it. And I was thinking, man, I wish there was just, it's just barely messed up. Just like a couple millimeters, not even a millimeter. I don't even know what the measurement would be. It's just maybe a millimeter. It's like down that far from where it should be. So I went around on YouTube looking around, and I had happened to have a video off to the side that said super glue and baking soda trick. And it showed some tape and a nut, and I thought, I bet that is a nut fix, but I'm not going to click on it because I've already ordered a new nut, and I'm just going to move on with other projects and other concerns that I have about other guitars and other videos I wanted to make. I was trying to think of things to do, and so I didn't click on it. And so as the day went on, I remembered the reason that I slotted the nut deeply was because I was having trouble. So I started picturing trouble again, that I'm going to get this new nut, and I'm going to put that E string on it, and it's going to pop off just like it did before. That's why, after all, that's why I cut it in the first place, right? And even though I've got everything right here, it may not be perfectly right, And I really like to do experimentation because I really, have a tendency to get a little obsessive with this stuff. And it makes me nuts when I can't quickly start working on something. I have to wait for something to be shipped, or I don't have any strings and it's a Sunday, or whatever the thing is. So I was growing impatient. So I went back to eBay and punched in baking soda and glue trick. And it was a StewMac video with Dan Erlewine. And he was using, it was like you should definitely go look at this video. It's fantastic. But he was showing an antique guitar, like an acoustic antique guitar, where the nut is kind of like came with the guitar. You don't want to mess with that thing. You want to try to just make the most of it. Maybe you're not even going to play it that much, but they want to just get it playable. And so he filled in, and the nut was a disaster. Be starting from scratch with the nut. It was all messed up, all slotted out. The strings are sitting way down on the fretboard, And so he fixed the entire nut with just baking soda and super glue. And he shows you in a very detailed way how to do it on that video. This video won't be as instructive, but I just wanted to show you kind of a quick way to do this. It's really easy, way easier than you think. I know that a lot of times people think that's too hard to do, but this is actually simple, and it actually works. So let me just show you how to do it. So the problem for me was this low E string, all right? So the first thing, I'm gonna work on the guitar, and I'm gonna slacken the strings. I always start with these high E strings, and the reason being is that when you want to do something, you want to work on this nut like this and try to fix it with a super glue, and you got your strings on. Let's say you got some kind of brand new strings on it. You're really nice, and you don't want to mess them up. I'm always going to start by slackening the high strings first, so that when I'm turning down the low strings, these aren't holding up the whole, the stress of the guitar, the stress of the instrument. So always just kind of, I'm going to start with the low E, take some of the pressure off of it first, because I don't want to lose these strings. By doing this little fix, I don't want to break the strings when I'm done. So then I'm going to do the next one. Just kind of drop it down. You can feel the pressure, coming off. Same thing with the G. Then I'll go with the D. That's definitely keeping a lot of pressure on the neck. A. And then finally the string we're going to work on, the E string. And I'm going to get it slack enough just to take it off. So now it's off, it's just away from the neck. Off of the nut. And now I'm looking down at the nut here, and what I have is just a slot that's a little too big. So I'm going to fill it. So step one, take this little bowl or whatever you have at home. And you'll see from his thing how he can do it, how you can do it. Now, the first thing I'm going to do before I start mixing up the baking soda is I'm going to take a little gaff tape, painter's tape, like any kind of adhesive tape, like masking tape, or just something that will come off easily, won't stick to the wood, and that'll keep super glue off your fretboard. Because if you get super glued on your fretboard, you're gonna have to chip it off with like some like a X-Acto blade or something like that. You could screw things up. So we'll avoid it by putting the tape on. And in this case, I don't even have to put much tape on. I'm gonna just make sure that it's covering the area where I'm gonna be working, because it's kind of actually hard to put tape underneath guitar strings. But I'm going to make sure that the tape goes all the way up to the nut, because that's where the glue's gonna drip down off the nut and get on your board that way. So I'm gonna make sure that it goes all the way up to the nut. See, like this, putting the tape all the way up to here, so that the main area of coverage is around the side. I'm gonna just kind of tape it off like that so it doesn't get on the wood and the string's in the way. Let me just kind of bring it around. So I'm gonna put it around the wood like that so that super glue doesn't drip off and end up over here, like that. And then I'm also gonna put a little piece of tape on the body above the nut in case something stupid happened there too. I have a tendency to screw things up pretty good, so I try to think ahead a little bit with some preventative measures. All right, so here is the tape. I'm gonna put that up here. This is very, very haphazard work because this is not that big of a thing. It's a very small space. I'm not even gonna worry about it too much. I just wanna protect the guitar. So now I've got tape on the top of the nut and the bottom of it, basically just taped around the nut. Now, if I was doing the entire nut, I would tape this whole space, but because it's just the one string, I just got this one space sort of taped off. Now, got my tape. I've got my baking soda. This is standard baking soda. Now, the other cool thing that I saw Dan doing, and this would be really cool, if you happen to have, and I actually do, but it's salvageable enough that I don't want to mess that one up yet. I'm actually going to rebuild that nut. So you take a little baking soda, or you could take that old nut that's screwed up. Say you've already sacrificed one to the gods. You could get on the sandpaper and the bottom and the side or whatever. If you've already sacrificed and you're never going to use it again, and you get some of that nut dust ground up, nut dust by Ronco. So you grind that up, right, until it's like a powder, and then you can take that and drop it in this space. But typically it's baking soda. So I'm going to take a little bit of baking soda, drop it in there. I just scattered some in there. Okay, now I'm going to take, and this is way too much, wasting baking soda. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of it in my fingers like this, and I'm just going to put it in, just jamming it in the little space. So I'm going to fill the entire nut, and it's just already filled with baking soda. You can't really tell, but what I did was I just stuffed it full of baking soda. Simple enough. And I'm going to do it again just to make sure. And you could do, like, I saw another YouTuber, a pretty big YouTuber, Luthier, and he made he took a straw and cut like kind of an angle out of it. That was kind of cool. It was like a little scooper that we could just drop it in. But honestly, I mean, your fingers, you just kind of stuff it in. So I'm just stuffing it in and filling up the space. Now, you could get very intricate about this, but I'm basically going to fill the nut all the way to the top, glue it, let it dry, and then just kind of slot it from there, as opposed to trying to fill it up to the spot where I think it will work best. I'm going to fill it all the way up like it's new and then reslot it carefully. Okay, so there was our baking soda. Now, I'll warn you, as soon as you get super glue out, this stuff is Scotch super glue, and you can get the super glue where the guy's hanging onto the thing. I can't remember the name of that. I used to like those ads when I was a kid. He would glue his hard hat to like a beam and then hold on to his, yeah. So anyway, I got the glue, right? All you're gonna, just remember, as soon as you get glue like this out, your fingers are gonna be covered in it, and that's just the law of super glue. Quick tip, coconut oil. It works great on getting rid of super glue. In fact, when I replaced this nut, I'm going to try just kind of dousing it in coconut oil, like the whole space, and then like kind of get an X-Acto blade and get in between the space between the nut and the guitar, see if I can get it saturated down in there and onto that super glue, because it's just a couple of drops of super glue holding the nut on. And I'm going to see if that will soften it before I remove it. Just trying to figure out ways to carefully remove things without removing material off the neck, So anyway, the universal law of super glue is you're going to have super glue fingers. So just carefully taking off the top, getting ready for my super glue fingers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just apply the glue directly to, getting super glued as we speak. I'm going to apply the glue directly on top of the baking soda. So we're just going to add it on. Watch it kind of drip on there. Don't put too much, just a drop or two, because what'll happen is when you get the glue on the baking soda, it sort of just drips over it. It won't read on camera here the way I've got this set up, but it just sort of drips over it and just forms an immediate like kind of rock. It looks like a piece of glass, like you could take, before you do it, just take a little bit of baking soda like on a surface, and then you just put a drop of the glue on, and you can watch it just sort of forms almost immediately into, like, it feels like almost like glass, like a piece of glass. It's very interesting chemical collision there between the soda and the glue. Okay, so next, and we're going to just kind of sit here, and it's going to take a minute. We'll have to do a jump cut, but during that minute or two, it's going to completely dry and seal up. Okay, so the glue is completely dry, and now on top of the nut, it's just hard. It's as hard as a stone, covering the whole nut. And now there's no way to put a string in there. It won't sit in there anymore. It just sits on the top because we've sealed up that gap, the nut space where the string typically runs through. Okay, so here's how I'm going to fix it. I'm going to take this needle file set. I got this for like $1 out of it's like one of those junky tool things, and they're selling them for probably like Chinese tools. But it's the perfect kind of thing to buy for working on a guitar because it costs $1 and it may come in handy. So I picked out the one here that has like an edge and then another edge and then another edge, and it's very thin. So I don't think I'll do too much damage, hopefully. I don't have a good track record of doing this. I screw things up pretty good. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm placing it right in the thing here, and then I'm just going to go back and forth. And you can see that it's not easy to do this because it's hard to see how far you're going down until you put the string in. So I'm just going to do it a little bit, just back and forth. I actually find this to be a bit nerve-rattling. So okay, so you're just going back and forth, trying to get a little groove together. All right, so blowing off all the dust. I don't know if you can see, but I've got a little groove here. I might just put the string in and see what happens. Okay, that's a good sign right there. It's actually staying on. Now, the one thing I thought about is that another thing that I could do, and I might do it in the future, it just wouldn't look that good, is I could put a string tree right here. And I've thought about this. I'm thinking that perhaps the routing is just a little off. Like maybe these are going a little bit too far on the outer edge of the headstock. Like maybe they should be in just a little bit more so that this isn't such an extreme angle, because that's where the trouble comes in. And that could be just the measurements are slightly off. I don't know. But I think one fix for it, if this keeps happening and I can't keep this nut together, is to put a tree right here. I just push it in so that this angle is straighter before it goes to the post. But I don't know if a string tree works so well on such short string length, so I'd rather just get it to work. So anyway, I've done a little back and forthing, and I've got the string in and it's not popping out. So let's see what happens. Let's see if I can get it to tune up and not jump out, you know. I got my tuner. Always makes me nervous. Okay, it stayed in. Wow, that's cool. That is really cool. Damn, that is awesome. I'm gonna take the tape off. I'm not done tuning the guitar, but that's huge. Check it out. Because it was just a little glitch, just a little. It's now, it might be a tiny bit lower. Yeah, I think it's like the tiniest bit lower than the rest of the strings. But now, it sits, let me see if you can see this. I don't know if you can see it. It sits right where it should. And you can see, obviously it's not popping out now. And it's not sunk way down there. I don't know if this is obvious. This is not the best way to shoot something like this, but it looks correct now. So I'm going to tune up the rest of the guitar. Okay, moment of truth. I'm going to see if it pops out, because sometimes once you start playing, it just jumps out, and that's what's been happening. So I'm fully prepared for that mentally, but let's see what happens. Didn't pop out. Neat. Okay, next test. Something a little more robust, a little more destructive. It did not pop out. I can't believe it. I'm just blown away. That's incredible. I wasn't expecting this to work, and I figured I'd make the video and then it wouldn't matter, and I would tell you I tried to do that and it didn't work. I was not expecting it to work this well. That's awesome. And I've got a new nut coming, and I'll eventually put it on knowing how crazy I am. It's going to drive me nuts that this is not exactly right, but it's pretty darn right, you know? That's amazing. And I don't hear any difference, because it has to be, it's such a small amount of added new material. I can't imagine that it'd affect much. But look at it, it's going in there now, and you can see how extreme that rake angle is on that E. That is just nuts, the way it goes so far. You know, it's going so far that way, and that way. Like, take a look at that. And this is a heavy string. This is an 11 gauge, this is a 52 gauge string out of 11 gauge string pack. It's 11s through 52. I bet that if I dropped it down to just a standard set of 11s, I think those are like 1149 or 1150, something like that. I forgot what the numbers were. That could help as well, because this is a pretty heavy string. But I'm going to highly recommend, I don't know who came up with this, but you should watch the Dan Erlewine video, because he does an entire nut. This is just one little slot. So you saw how easy I just dropped the string, put a little tape on. I didn't even have to do any cleanup. But if I had, I would use a little knife just to kind of chip the super glue away. And remember, coconut oil removes super glue. So if I ever need to take the nut off again, which I will, I'm going to try to just sort of saturate the nut in coconut oil, get my blade out, you know, loosen it, get it off of there, clean up the fretboard material, install a new nut. And get rid of all the coconut oil, obviously. And then from then on, when using coconut oil, being careful, knowing that it could affect, you know, super glue's adhesiveness. But anyway, I'm kind of stunned that this works so well, and it now frees me up. I don't have to wait until Wednesday or Thursday, whenever the new nut gets here. I can start playing, and I know now that the rest of my setup was good and true if it's not jumping out of the nut the way it was before with all the other problems. So the next video, I'm going to update you on what happened with the bridge and with the Duesenberg, because I basically wrestled with the devil after that went down, and then finally, you know, here we are fixing this. But it's really playing well now, so I'm excited. I think I finally got it to where it's ready, you know, to be a serious guitar. And like I said, this is my first ever build, so I want to, you know, try to give people the confidence to go out and give it a shot, because if I can do it, anyone can. And I will not lie, it has been difficult, and it's hard to get these really to play the way, you know, a Gibson or a Fender would play. You got to put a lot of effort into it. It's not just slapping stuff together, because guitar building, it has a lot of little, you know, intricacies. That's why guys go to luthier school and spend all this time learning this stuff, because man, oh man, it's a challenge. And I feel like this thing just nearly took me down. So I'm really excited for it to be playing so well. Thanks again. Good luck with your projects out there. I'll see you next time.